started. Hey everybody, well, thanks for coming out to Squak Mt Nursery on this nice, warm, somewhat June day, which we haven't had that many of them around here. We've been selling here at Squak Mt Nursery since I've been with company for 7 years, and they've been selling before I came on board. So Hendrikus Organics and Squak Mt Nursery have had a great partnership, relationship for a long time. All the products that I talk about today can all be bought right here at Squak Mt Nursery. He's fairly priced. Matt does a great job, and his team here at Squak Mountain. So I encourage you all to definitely, purchase products from him. I've been in the industry myself for over 30 years now. Grew up on a golf course. Did that for 12 years, worked for my dad, was superintendent for 36 years. My grandpa was superintendent for 25 years. So I started maintaining turf at the highest level as a kid. And from then I worked for some of our bigger chemical companies and got an idea of how the chemical side worked. That's basically all I really knew growing up. And I've managed HOAs, I've worked in retail, helped launch brands. So I've had experience in a lot of different ways. And I started talking with Hendrikus Organics, the owners, about 7 years ago, about maybe coming to work for them. They have been growing things organically for 40 years, a long time. And that's the way that they have, Hendrikus grew up on an organic farm. That's the way he knew how to grow things right. And we kind of merged our ideas, and I've helped them grow, and we work as a good team growing. And I'm really glad you came out today, because what we've learned over the last decades is everything starts with the soil. Feeding the soil feeds the plant. And that's going to be the biggest take-home message. And it's not really what you hear on a lot of mainstream companies. It's really just about the plant, but that is not the way Mother Nature works. We know that. You go back to the beginning of time, you look around the world, where are the healthiest plants? You go down to the south, into the Amazon. Up here, our national forests. Nobody feeds them, but they manage to survive and prosper and grow for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. How can that be? And everything needs food, nitrogen. What we had this morning, breakfast. Plants are no different. Everything survives on that. And it has to feed itself. So Mother Nature created an ecosystem below our feet, full of billions of microbes, humic acid, things that will break down organic matter. If it didn't work that way, there would be no national forest. There would be no life on this planet. She figured it out, how to do it. And that is the way that we also fertilized eons ago. We first came to America. We learned that manures and fish, they increased yields. But those are still all broken down by the microbes in the soil. And that is what we knew worked. But then over time, into the Industrial Revolution, things really started to change in this country and this world. We started making discoveries like natural gas in the earth, ammonia, all these things. We started realizing, well, those are nitrogen sources too. So why shouldn't we just use those instead of going the organic way? Because all companies at the beginning that sold nutrients were organic companies. There were no synthetic companies. And so then that just started to change. And we also started creating chemicals, pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, herbicides, all of these controlling agents. So if we started bypassing all the microbes in the soil and just started feeding just the plant, we had all of these chemicals to treat potential problems. Because when you have good microbes in a soil, there's less room for bad microbes in the soil. So once we started not feeding them like we did before, we start creating voids. And then, of course, here comes development. So we have a national forest sitting in a place, that soil that has been developed for hundreds, thousands of years, we come in one day and wipe it all out. It's gone. And I actually managed a trilogy of Redmond Ridge, and I saw this happen. I mean, we had 2 feet of beautiful topsoil, and it was all cut and removed. And then it took it right down to the glacial till, which is really not what a plant should grow in. Then they started rolling lawns out and rolling plants into this environment, and of course, plants were dying, disease was going crazy, lawns were 80, 70, 80% moss, and it was not what we should be doing. You know, there's certain environments where plants survive better than others. There's acidic environments, there's acidic-loving plants, and there's other plants that don't like that. You can't just put something in a soil that isn't suitable for that kind of a plant. So I asked, well, what's the solution? I started trialing different synthetics in manures. I created different synthetics. I know how they work. In the industrial evolution time, we started creating urea, ammonium sulfates, ammonium nitrates. Then we started trying to put coatings. We knew those released immediately. So it didn't matter what was in the soil, it would just release. And it made everything work much faster than it should. So when they put coatings on it, sulfur coating, plastic coatings, all that stuff is still being used today to try to slow it down. It's all about slowing release to the plant. Again, we're not even thinking about the soil at all. Now, there are organics out there. Manures are still used. There's some proteins. The problem is a lot of those don't release very consistently either. And if you put something down and you have a plant that's struggling, you have really unhealthy soil, the breakdown can be really slow. Well, when I started talking with Hendrikus Organics, they had an organic that was made a little bit different. We know that a microbe will break down anything in the smallest form. I like to use lime as an example. You put limestone down as a rock, it could be there for thousands of years to break down. But if you grind it to just dust, that is a form a microbe can start to break down more efficiently. And that's how this fertilizer is made that you see here that we sell at Squak Mt Nursery. It starts basically out as like a dust, and which is a form that a microbe can break it down, and then they bind it with humic acid. So it's a water-soluble humic acid, and then once it gets wet, it starts going back to the small little particles again, which is in a form that a microbe can break down more efficiently. And like I said, I grew up in the chemical industry, so ultimately it has to work. I think going green is the right thing to do, but if you have plants that are struggling, lawns that are struggling, you put it down, nothing happens for weeks, which is what I saw with a lot of organics that I trialed. You like put it down, 2 weeks go by, it doesn't look any different. Well, that's because likely there's little microbes in that soil, and that can be a problem in itself. I don't expect organics to do something that isn't possible. At the same time, a lot of manures, when they're made, they're just pressed so tight together that initial breakdown takes too long. It just sets there. And then finally it may release. So what you need is a consistent breakdown right at the beginning. And then I had to think, well, our first product that I really trialed is our seeds at 804. It wasn't 824. City of Redmond was looking to go this direction over 7 years ago, but nobody had ever really brought them a product that would work efficiently. So I convinced them to try it in a couple areas in their park system back in 2015. And it was one of the greenest areas in their park that following spring, and they liked the fact that it doesn't really have much odor, it doesn't have much dust. So organic doesn't have to stink to work, I think, and that's been a big thing. A lot of organic do stink, and a lot of people don't want to put down stinky stuff. But because of the way this is made, though, we have a no phos rule for turf. Unless you have damaged turf or you're putting in a new lawn, you're really not supposed to put down phosphorus, which is the middle number right there. You see that is a 0. If you always wonder why is that a 0, because from all the soil testing that I have done and I've seen, native soils here, even down in the glacial till after you take the topsoil away, have abundance of phosphorus in the soil. We know that. Unless you significantly alter it, you don't really need to apply it. And so we took it to a 0, and then the City of Redmond could take it across the entire park system. And they have not looked back now for 7 straight years across the entire park system with our product. And it's been fun, and they don't really want to even try anything else because they like the way the product works, they like that it's not dust, they like that it's stink. And that's really key. And for me to be here today, I want all of those boxes, everything to be checked. I want a product that people can feel good about putting down. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it's safe, doesn't mean it works well. And I wouldn't be here if this stuff didn't work. But even knowing that, there's a transitional period. Without knowing the microbial populations in a soil, I can't guarantee even my 804 is going to work that well initially. Because when you're using synthetics on a lawn, you are bypassing the microbes. And if you're hitting it hard enough with synthetics, there's debate in the industry how much synthetics and chemicals knock back microbes in your soil, but we can all agree it's not a good thing to do for microbes, particularly if you're putting down fungicides or anything. You can zap them. Instead of feeding microbes, you can potentially hurt the microbes. So I need something, though, to transition, because when a lawn is used to being fed a certain way, any kind of turf or even a plant, all of a sudden you go cold turkey and there's not a lot of microbes in there, and you put down organic fertilizer, the breakdown could be very slow. So that led to the development of our product called Nitrogen Plus, which is the two you see right here. And you see those little white specks in that. That is actually organic nitrate. There's only one place on Earth, which is actually down in Chile. Over time, plant, fish broke down, created this white colored like rock, and they tested it and they realized it was actually nitrogen, organically. And it was available immediately when it got wet. So you have an organic that is available, though. So what it did was it allowed me to create, us as Hendrikus Organics, to create a fertilizer that would break down right away to give the plant what it's used to, but the majority of it is the 804. So it allows us to transition to organics without really knowing how long it's going to take for the microbes to really get to work and start improving that soil. Because ultimately, we want to transition it to an environment where you could even mulch mow. Grass can be an organic fertilizer in itself. Now, when I was using synthetics, I would put down whatever the national brand was at that time when I was a kid on the lawns that I was maintaining, and next week I'd have 3 to 4 inches or 5 inches of growth, and then I would have huge bags and huge trailers full of all of this potential organic fertilizer, but it was too much. And plus, I wasn't really feeding microbes in the soil, and off of that I would have lots of thatch build up. Nothing is really breaking this stuff down. Well, what if we started feeding those microbes? They're going to break down the thatch, they're going to break down the organic matter, and they're going to turn it to organic fertilizer itself. And so when I started going down this road with our products, I put away my bag. I haven't bagged grass in 6 years. I'm able to just mulch mow it, falls down, microbes go to work, disappears. I don't have the thatch, and it just works so much better. But at the same time, I didn't have a lot of options when I was a kid to even go down this road, because most organics didn't work very well. And I couldn't do something just to be green back then, because it was high level maintenance, high level turf. So seeing our product work, seeing the breakdown consistently, seeing it in big installations, big parks. City Sammamish came on after that, and I think they were 4 or 5 applications synthetics a year, and they really didn't want to put that near Lake Sammamish, so they liked our product, and they'd always tell me, Michael, it's kind of, for my guys, it's hard to make a mistake with it. You could dump a whole bag in a 95-degree day, and it's not going to decimate, kill the grass. You do that with a chemical type fertilizer, synthetic, you can damage areas. I've seen turf striped where they overlap too much. It's green, light green. Organics are tougher to really make a mistake with. So it makes it much easier to put down. The only time you make a mistake is you completely miss an area. Maybe it doesn't grow quite as much as the other parts of the lawn, so you come back with another application. The numbers, you might think, why are they lower? You can say, well, that's an 8%. If you look at a synthetic, at some of our national retailers, they could be 25, 30%. The biggest difference, and for you guys to remember, is when you put our product down, you will get full use of that nitrogen, which is the first number. Synthetic-wise, majority of it isn't even coated. So even the products that they do sell in national retail centers, they're not even the best of the synthetics, because they really don't want it to last very long. They want it to release quickly, grow like crazy, and then 6 weeks you put another application down. They're basically, when I was in college at Oregon State doing research, a beaver, degree in horticulture, took classes in a lot of classes in soil science, environmental health and safety. It was really about letting the grass tell you what it needs. You wait for it to get hungry. You wait for it to get thin. Because you can't fertilize something that's already growing 3 to 4 inches a week. You got to wait till it gets lower. We were cutting grass on greens many years ago. We could tell, okay, we're getting half as much grass as we were 2 weeks ago. Okay, the greens are getting hungry. It's time to go out and feed them. That is the way I always thought. And when you go down the road we are today with our organic fertilizer, I don't want it ever to be hungry. I could fertilize a green, healthy lawn and keep it that way. That's really the goal. I don't ever want to see turf that needs to be fed. Turf is not a crop. We're not trying to grow it and to seed. We're trying to just have a beautiful place for wildlife to live, kids to play, cooling in the atmosphere. That is what it is. That's all it should be. So now my whole thought process is I want to get it healthy. I want to transition it from for nitrogen plus. I'll ask people, how does your lawn look today? How has it been maintained? Are you using synthetics? Have you fertilized it all? I'm probably going to start with nitrogen plus to make sure the existing grass has enough nutrients to grow. And that's where I start. And then ultimately, I may take 2 applications of nitrogen plus. After 2 months, it's still a little bit hungry. The microbes maybe aren't quite. You had really bad. And I've renovated some really bad soils with our program. People will often say, well, how long is it going to take? A couple of years and all that? No, after a few months, it's looking pretty good in most cases. Some really bad soils. And so it does work. And so, but understanding how microbes work and what they can't do, I'll never say promise something it cannot do. So once you get the grass where it needs to be, then you're just going to recharge it with our 804. That's it. Okay, I've fertilized in 3 months. I know it's going to run out eventually, because just like everything, when you have a lawn, it's not like it's a national forest where you get constant leaves and animals, everything coming to the floor, and that's how the national forest feeds itself. Well, a lawn isn't quite like that. Mulch mowing, returning the clippings, will provide a percentage of nitrogen back to the lawn, but it won't be enough, for a full season. So we know at some point you're going to have to put it down. Well, what's great about our product is when you put it down, you get full use of the nitrogen. Even though it's 8%, you get full use of the nitrogen. It's not going to leach away. Plus, a lawn does not need a lot of food. It just needs enough to maintain it. That's all it needs. That's why the nature has worked. Trees don't need a lot of food. They just need enough to maintain it. We never needed high amounts of nitrogen in the first place for a healthy lawn. That's never needed. And what's happened in the golf course industry is they're so used to the synthetics growth, now they have plant growth regulators. They're trying to make it, it's like an upper and a downer at the same time. And they're using more chemicals today than when I was a kid. It's like, why don't we turn back the clock and start going down the organic road again, which is where Mother Nature's done it forever. And what I have seen as the soils improve, as we've gone with our programs, it's just a better way to grow a lawn. But it's not something that, it's not trialed as much, because ultimately, I could say what I'm saying today because I don't sell chemicals anymore. It's a hard thing to say if I'm selling a bunch of chemicals, because there's a lot of money in chemicals, a lot of money, even more than in our products. So for a lot of companies, they don't really want to go down this road anytime soon because they know it's going to lose them money. But we are here as Hendrikus Organics to try to tell you guys the truth so you can start going down the road. And I like seeing robins in my lawn eating worms. I like the fact that I'm not putting any pesticides on anything. Everybody's yard is an ecosystem. And we all have individual challenges from whatever was left over after development. Some soils are better than others. And I can't say exactly what you'll have to do to get yours healthy. I can create a plan that I know will work, but it may take longer for somebody from one lawn to another lawn, depending on where you live, depending on the pH level. There's lots of variables. So off of that, after looking at all the different ways to improve soils and everything, we created our own step-by-step program. There are key products in that program that I've had to address. I mean, moss is a big issue in this climate. More moss in the Northwest than any place in the U.S. for sure. And how do you get rid of moss? And there are national products that claim moss control. Well, and the most common one is ferrous sulfate or iron. And iron, to me, is very interesting, the fact that we put iron on any soil. The most abundant mineral in our crust is iron. You do any soil test and you will see iron levels off the charts. So the last thing we need to put down on turf is iron. But iron is also kind of toxic to moss. It'll burn it back. But iron is also acidic. I mean, it's acidic. All of our soils are acidic. So iron, you're going to actually, if you put enough down, you will over time lower your pH, which I'll talk about pH in a few minutes. So we don't really want to lower pH. And also iron is a temporary burn back. It'll turn moss black, but it's still there. It's organic matter. So if you don't remove it, it'll just reform on top of the burn and you'll have moss again next year and pretty much forever. Which some companies like that because then you can always put down moss control. I don't really want to go down that road, so we started looking for alternatives. And one of those products is Axis. Another product that is made by Mother Nature. It's basically fossilized plankton. It's only one place in the U.S. that has this product. It's out of Nevada. It's just laying there. When there was water across all of the United States, there was some lower, like craters where this stuff settled down, and it created this product. It's a very unique product. It's basically, I call it Mother Nature's sponge. So when you have a wet area, and there's other products that are used in for professional sports leagues, where they put stuff down to cause absorption. So when you have wet area, that's basically what this product does. And I'll show you how it works. So you have a wet area. So I'll put some water, and you can see. It's pretty interesting. You can see the water. And then you put some Axis in it. You get enough of it, it's gone. There's no water. It's inside of the Axis, which is amazing. It's fossilized, and it's like Rice Krispies on the cereal side, where it'll just basically suck it all up. So instead of having a wet, gooey spot, you now have a firm spot. And you get enough of it. Now, some lawns are worse than others, some drain differently than others. It's a permanent addition, what I love about it. So when you see it like this stuff is millions of years old, it'll be there forever. So you make an investment, but instead of having the wet, gushy areas, it's going to be inside of the Axis. And every place I've used it, it may take one application, it could take 2 to 3 applications, how bad it is, but eventually you will not have any wet areas. And what's great about Axis too is I call it, it's the year-round product. It also holds water for the summer. So if you're irrigating, it'll absorb it instead of the water just running off. So if you aerated an area, you drop some Axis into it, area that's burned, it'll absorb it, so it'll likely take less water to keep an area green. Yeah.
Does it release then?
It releases. It naturally gets pulled out of the soil.
So do you have to change your irrigation?
You don't have to change anything. You'll likely over time probably need to water less. Because you'll need less. Because instead of it just running off, it'll be inside the Axis, and then the plant will naturally absorb it out of the Axis. It also, that they've seen through testing, is when you have areas that air and water are going in and out of, that's a good environment for microbial growth. So we've seen more microbes as you get more Axis too. Yeah.
Do you have to incorporate it or topical or?
You can just use a fertilizer spreader, that's how I do it, and you just kind of sweep it in the best you can. It will eventually work itself down. If you're building a brand new lawn, that type of thing, you could just mix it in, which is what I will do a lot of times, just mix in maybe 10% by volume. And you'll always have this. Now, a lot of your products, you have mulch and different things inside of the soil, but that will change over time. It can break down. Axis never breaks down. So that was a key part of our renovation program. And I'll hand this out to everybody. Pass that around. Because I was asked years ago, it's like, give me a step-by-step program of what to do. It's like, what do I remove? I know aeration, and they said, our nutrients, from all the testing I've done, work better than anything I have tested. And I've done a lot of testing. We've tested our products on millions of square feet. I mean, City of Tacoma recently came on board. We got City of Olympia on board. I got major landscape companies that are using our products. And we have golf courses now that have some that have started using our products. So I've seen it work, but how what do? What is a step for a homeowner? And so a lot of it is, aeration. Open up the soil. Get air and water, nutrients, everything down to the plant. If you have your soil that is just so compacted, everything's going to struggle to really improve that turf. So aerate it. And the process is remove weeds. I believe in weed scouting. You see a little patch of clover, don't watch it grow into a big patch of clover. And don't have to wait and try to go get a chemical to spray it. Just dig it out. Take a trowel, pop it out. Throw some seed. It's gone. And a lot of times people just watch stuff, and professionals too. They'll drive over or mow over a spot they could have popped out as a tiny little spot. Well, now it's like this. So then they spray it and they have a big dead spot. So if you just do it, like in the renovation program initially, I have what they call like a minor renovation program. It's step by step, when to put access in, and the major renovations, and it works. We also sell our own seed. We started selling our own turf seed a few years ago. Not all turf seeds are created equal. And I had people asking me, well, what turf seed should I put down? And I say, well, I try to recommend them, but there's a lot of cheap mixes out there. There's a lot. Some have weed seed in them, and some have like Kentucky bluegrass that doesn't do that well here. Ours is just, it's in one of the bins. It says Hendrikus Organics. It's just 3 perennial rye and 2 fine fescues. Nothing else. High end, very high quality seed. So that is a building block of putting a new lawn in. They said, don't get cheap with your seed, and I truly believe that. So I wanted to be able to market something that worked well with our program, and so we sell some of the best seed in the industry. But still, how to do the process is key, and this program will take you down to doing minor and like a full renovation with our products, step-by-step process. Kind of makes it very easy. That's why I tell people with seed doesn't germinate well under 60 degrees. Now, it's been the biggest challenge I can think of in my career this spring. We've had so many days under 60. Germination has taken twice as long as it normally would. But ultimately, seed needs 2 things to germinate. It needs water and warmth. That's it. It doesn't need nutrients or anything at that point. It needs those 2 things. So, on all of our products that are listed on here, they all work in the, they give you options like our soil enhancer. If you had a lawn that was really, really sandy, I've seen done soil testing in some areas, and you can have low phosphorus. It's possible. That one has phosphorus in it, but in the most part, if you're doing a renovation, a major renovation, you're putting down Nitrogen Plus, our Complete, which is just guarantees, because there's a slight chance you could have low phosphorus. So we do recommend a lot of times when you're putting a new lawn in to use the balance for like our 644. But in most cases, if you're doing a renovation, you probably have enough phosphorus. But when you rip something out, if you have a lot of thatch, that excess roots and stuff in your lawn, it's best to just, if you can, start from scratch. That's get a dethatcher or hire somebody to come out and dethatch it for you. If you go to our website, HendrikusOrganics.com, we are building a new one, but our old one is still up. We do work with some local professionals, like in Harmony type thing, where they will come out and do some of these. They basically use all of our products, and Lad and his team will come out and they can do a lot of this stuff for you. Or you can do it yourself, because really there's nothing here step by step that a homeowner can't do, because I've done all of these. That's why I created it. That's why I like access to. It's very light to put down, put it in a spreader. I run a dethatcher, even a foot aerator, anything to just kind of open it up will help. So I said our products are a spoke in an overall wheel. There are some companies that will try to sell you. I can't say my products our products in Hendrikus Organics are the solution completely. They're not. They're part of the solution. But when you have soil that was once beautifully created by nature, and we're down to glacial till, it's a process to grow a lawn in that environment. But it can definitely be done organically, and we truly believe about solutions to problems. I don't believe, yes, go ahead.
I have a question. With the access, you said sometimes it can take 1 to 3 applications.
Yeah.
Is that within a season?
or just over a longer period of time. So basically what you could afford, I could put down, or I just hit a few spots. I have like a few spots that are bad. Put down one application this year. You could come back in a few months, put another application down. You just don't want to smother it on an application, but you could literally, you could put it down as heavy as you want, but it could be 80 to 100 pounds per thousand, it could be 200 pounds per thousand on an application.
And then how often are you going to have to reapply that?
All-
10 years or
Once you get it to optimum, you fixed it, then you're mostly done.
done? Okay.
And so it's not an annual application. A lot of products are temporary things. You got to constantly come back. You don't want that. So it's like it's an investment, but it's a permanent investment. That's what I love about it. It's one of those few things that is truly a part of a solution. And that's a big message today. Is like I said, we're trying to return the soils back to something closer to where they were, and also realizing that we are in the Northwest, and we have very acidic soils. Grass does not like pH below 6.0 is about as low as grass likes. And I like to talk about what basically what the importance of pH is. And doing a soil test, you can have it done. I know King County has had some. You go to our website, they have offered free testing in the past where you take a few samples in your yard, small ones, mix it into about 2 cups of soil, put it in a bag, and then drop it off. And one thing they will check is your pH. pH is critical. And you can see off this, here's a few of it, you can hand it around so you guys can see what low pH does. This is availability of nutrients. That's what these scales are. These little tight things show when it gets really small, availability is very low. So it doesn't matter at that point how much you're fertilizing if there's really no availability. And when I first came out to Trilogy, we had some pHs that were in the 4.5 zone throughout this property. And I was like, why is the lawn yellow? They had a national company that would come in and spray it with a liquid nitrogen in the spring to turn the yellow temporarily to green, and then it would slowly go right back to yellow. And all winter it would be yellow. It's like, why do I have yellow turf with moss all over it? And I did the testing. I said, oh, now I can see. First of all, there's no availability even with the synthetic fertilizer. So we've got to get that pH up if we ever want to grow turf here. Know that the soils were fine, really acidic for a national forest, for evergreens. They can survive in an acidic environment. Turf cannot. And I mean, in theory, places like that probably shouldn't have had turf put on them unless you're going to start to really change the pH of that soil right off the bat, because you've got to fix that. And high acidity is also, it's just great for moss. Moss loves wetness and it loves acidity. So if you have both of those together, you have the perfect environment. So when I was up there, we put down 250 tons of lime, and then slowly we got the pHs up to 5.5, and the grass was staying healthier and greener throughout all of winter because the availability kept going up, and that's a big part of it. So if you don't know, or you bought a new house and it doesn't look very good, I mean, it'd be a great starting point to just take some soil samples, take it down and have it checked. Then at least you know you're starting. They'll also tell you how much lime, which is a basic product that I told you that's been ground down to dust, how much of that will it take to raise your pH to an optimum level? Which you can see, once you get to 6, most of the bars start to become available. And you can see that's about the minimum for nitrogen to be fully available is 6.0. And for turf, that's our goal. We want to get it up to about 6.0. Then your phosphorus is getting more available. Really doesn't get fully available until 6.5. But it doesn't take a lot of phosphorus for a healthy plant, luckily, but it does take some. And you can see potassium. These are all key minerals that are in a healthy soil. But then you see iron. Look at the availability. The more acidic, the more it's available. There's a ton of iron. A lot of people will see a plant that's kind of yellow. Could be a hydrangea, could be a rhododendron or anything like that, and they'll think, well, we need lots of iron. And so we put iron. There's products out there that are just iron. But that's very unlikely that it's low in iron when it's abundant already. It's really likely that the soil is really bad and it's low in nitrogen. That's what it's struggling from. So the goal is, as I said, get that pH up. If your lawn is not reacting very well, I mean, you could put an application down without a test if you haven't done it for a long time. maybe 20 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll likely only help. Though I wouldn't just keep putting it down every season because you probably won't need that much. So that's always a good thing to do. And in our program, it talks about that, when to put lime down. Lime is also broken down by microbes, so I like to space it out when you're putting down organic nutrients so you don't have like overload of microbes. So you fertilize. Axis can go down anytime because it's not going to be broken down by anything. So it can go down with fertilizers. It can put down any month of the year. It really doesn't make any difference. It's only there to absorb. And provide air and space and for nutrients and everything inside of the axis. So that definitely is a good thing to do. And so, let's see. Now for disease, red thread is one of the challenges. Ryegrass is the most common grass that's put in, I would say, for new lawns, and it's what they call a bunch grass. It's really coarse. It's a strong grass, but it's also very susceptible to rust and red thread. So you see little patches of like the little balls of pink in your turf. That likely means that you have an unhealthy environment. You probably have lower nitrogen. So I would recommend on nitrogen plus, aeration, try to get more air, water, circulation, try to get a little bit higher nitrogen transition because a lot of lawns that are struggling will get disease pretty easy. And all the rain we've had, you could have some disease. So that's the best thing to do. There's also other problems out there. Talk about it. The healthiest plant is the most resistant plant. It's that way with roses or turf. So you always want to try to get the plant as healthy as you can. There's crane fly larvae, there's chafer beetles that are out there. A few of them aren't going to hurt anything, but most of the pests in the Northwest don't do well if the lawns are draining well because they need the moisture that I've found through testing. I rarely see a healthy organic lawn that is draining well or the moisture is being held inside of axis instead of in the lawn itself. So that when you can try to get it fixed, get rid of the thatch, all of this, you're not going to have a lot of these problems. And there's a lot of chemicals out there, obviously, to treat. I used to sell a lot of insecticides, and a lot of people will put insecticides. They'll see any kind of damage on a lawn, they'll immediately put insecticides down. We don't want that. Everything ultimately ends up in our waterways. It goes down storm drains, ends up in lakes, water tables, the sound. We don't want that, and we want everything to basically to be maintained in a safe environment. Safe environment and keep it that way. So if you go down our road and start putting these products down, do the programs, go to our website, HendrikusOrganics.com. There's a lot of information on there on how to grow a healthy plant, on the key points to a healthy soil. And if you're starting from scratch, we do have like an organic lawn replacement on our website. Or if you're going to start, it's key to make sure if you're going to go back to ground zero and take everything out, and you have really bad soil, unless you can put in a couple feet, we do have an overlay mix that works well. You can do it yourself or hire. That information is there. How to water, correctly. I think we'll have a reason to water at some point, and we will see. But how to water your lawn, it really depends. I know a lot of people will say it's more sporadic watering. You want to get water deeper, encourage roots to go deeper. But a lot of times if you have glacial till, that really isn't realistic because the water is just going to run off. And though aeration will help open it up because you really want to get more water down to the roots in the turf. So it could take light waterings more often, like soaking, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Ultimately, if you have a healthier soil and you can get water deeper, you could do it more sporadically. Or if you put axis in your lawn, there's a good chance that it'll be holding the moisture in the axis too, because water usage is definitely a key to a healthy lawn. We also have a full plant program too. I know we heard talking about turf. But it kind of works the same way. If you look at our turf program, these are some of the key products. I'll hand this out. Start with our plant program. Goes over, I call them the soil builders. Our seed, our humic acid product. This is part of our renovation program. So this is something that is in a healthy soil. Naturally, it forms by Mother Nature. And what it does is it causes what they call natural chelation, which is basically you have minerals in your soil, all of these, but a lot of them are kind of binding together, so the nutritional uptake can be slow. It kind of separates them a little bit. It also provides lots of carbon. It's also an alive humic acid. It's taken from the earth. Eventually, everything starts out as peat and ends up as coal. It's younger than that. So you're putting some of this back into the soil. And when you start adding this, you're going to have a naturally healthier lawn over time too. This is one of the key building blocks of it. And obviously Axis is also. And we also have our, we call our Ocean Magic. It's got lots of biochar. Biochar can stabilize nitrogen in soils. So we mix these two together. You have a lot of alive microbes. So ultimately, we're trying to rebuild that soil. And if you get more microbes into it, you're going to have, over time, a healthier soil, which means a healthier plant. Like I said, so these are some of the soil builders. And then you have the basically the feeders. And I already talked about Nitrogen Plus, so if you don't know the micro populations, you've used synthetics, that's always a great place to start. Ultimately, you're going to want to get to our Seasons product. So that's it. All this information is also on our website. So I encourage you all to go there. And like I said, same thing with plants, because we do believe in doing, I'll send this one out too. So if you grow any kind of plants, it's the same thing, and it really doesn't matter what your soil is. You're gonna have to add these. Another product is our Start Right. We do infuse some. Now I can talk about what's like mycorrhizae. That's one of the key fungus for a healthy soil. As it basically, you're putting in a little colony in your soil. So we have that. We put traces amount of that in all of the fertilizer when they're making it. And what it does is, if it's near the roots of the plant, it'll cause little like white hairs to grow on the roots. So it's like doubling your root system, which is key for plant health. So the more you get of that, so if you put a new plant in the ground, you sprinkle a little bit of this, or you put any of our fertilizers down, you're going to get trace amounts of it. So that naturally forms. Like I said, that's one of the amazing things that is in our soil, is it will form naturally. You're basically planting colonies when you put in a mycorrhizae product. So these are the same kind of thing on a plant, because turf, if it's a turf, if it's a rhodie, if it's the azalea, they all grow basically the same way. So we're just trying to return this back to the soil, and then we feed them with the different fertilizers that we have, that we've trialed. And it's the Nitrogen Plus. If you bought it for your turf, you could also use it on your plants if you're transitioning to organics, initially to give it some food. And what's great about our Nitrogen Plus product too, I should mention, is it will work down to 50 degrees. The problem with a lot of organics is microbes get kind of sleepy when they get under 50 degrees anyways, even up to 60. They're not really working as well. Nitrogen Plus, if you had a yellow lawn and you wanted to get it greener and it's 55 degrees, it will do that. And that's what makes our product very unique in that way too. You don't have to put down a synthetic just to get a reaction. You will get a reaction from our products. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
About the non-organic fertilizer that we have been using, how
Yeah.
long do we need to wait before we use non-organic?
You can go to Nitrogen Plus, right away.
Like 2 weeks later?
Oh yeah. I mean, it'll start. Now, you may want to wait for the synthetic to kind of flush out, because you're getting a lot of growth at that point. So I would probably wait for it the growth to slow, because you will get a little bit of reaction in the first week with Nitrogen Plus anyway, but it'll help you transition away from it. But yeah, so wait for it to kind of go down, and then, because like I said, I don't know the microbial populations at that point as you're transitioning. But yeah, so give it a little time, and then you go Nitrogen Plus, and then see how it looks after a couple months or so, after you put that down. and then you can come back to seasons, and really start, the transition. Question? Yeah.
Yeah, I just had this. How about clover? I mean, clover is lovely in some ways, and
Yeah.
it's like it.
Yes.
Do you recommend teaching a little bit?
I mean, it's all up to you. There are mixes, there are clover mixes. You can plant white clover, and it doesn't take much nutrients for clover to have a clover lawn, type of a thing. You can, but it will keep spreading. So that's one of those things where if you leave a little area, it'll become a bigger and bigger and bigger. And clover is very hard to control. Even with chemicals, it's very hard to control. You're going to end up digging it out most of the time. So, I mean, clover is like what they call a nitrogen fixer. It will add some nitrogen, to the soil, but ultimately clover with ryegrass and all that, they don't always look very well together. And they do attract bees at times. If you don't want, and if you're walking on your yard, you don't want to step on a bee. But go ahead.
In my backyard, I've got quite a few Douglas fruit trees that drop a lot of needles and things.
Yes.
Is it better for me to pick up the grass clippings with all the other debris, or should I just leave it all down on the lawn?
I mean, it'll probably, if you get a little bit of needles, probably aren't going to hurt anything. If it's a lot, I don't know how much you're covering. You don't want to smother because it could cause an area of the grass to die back because you're kind of covering and reducing the light on the turf. So it depends how much. If it's a little bit, you're probably okay. But grass clippings, if you go organically, it should all, and you got microbes working well, you can just leave them on there. Yeah.
What about pets? I've got like a 2-month-old puppy. How quick can you get a dog out on this?
You can pretty much, after you fertilize, and our product, the particles are smaller too, so it tends to just disappear, but it wouldn't hurt your pet at all. So that's what's great about it. There's nothing in our products that are really going to hurt anything. And like I said, just because it's organic, you can have some questionable organic nutrients and meats and blood and things like that. Ours is very clean, like a lot of alfalfa meal, some feather meal. There's not anything in there. We have more good stuff. We don't get cheap on anything in that product. So you get full use of it. You get nothing but quality nutrients, and they're safe.
One other quick one to piggyback on his. We've got a cedar deodora, whatever, with needles.
Yeah.
And we can get inches of needles. And so those you would probably want to blow off.
Yeah, you probably want to blow off. Yeah, because they'll take a little. They will eventually break down too, but.
Well, they're just ruining.
But it's too much. It's likely going to smother it. Yeah, you probably want to blow those off.
Also, like a 2-acid or 2-alkaline.
They're acidic. Yeah. Ultimately. Yeah, they will be a little acidic. So yeah, they will knock it back. So raking that out. So I said, just taking a rake. Like I said, once you get everything transitioned, grass clippings though, I love grass clippings. So that one you can just mulch mow it. Get some mulching blades on a rotary mower, or I even use a push mower. Works great. I just let the grass clippings lay there, and in a couple days they're gone. And I don't see thatch. That's what's great. I mean, for so many years I battled thatch with synthetics. And I'll talk with some of the guys that do maintenance. We get hired by homeowners. It's like, you're mulch mowing, but you're not feeding your microbes. It doesn't really even make any sense. Why don't you go organically, increase the microbial population so the mulch mowing works better? It didn't make sense to feed those microbes, break it down. And a lot of the companies out there, you get so much, when you have 2-3 inches of thatch in your lawn, it's hard for any nutrient to even get down to the roots. So even then, a lot of guys switch to synthetic liquids, try to penetrate all of that. So when you can just clean it all up, do our renovation program, you're not going to have to deal with it again. You may do aeration every couple of years. If you're walking on it a lot, you might get a little compaction. So it's always good to open it up regardless of how it's maintained. But outside of aeration, once you've gone down the road with our products and you've fixed those wet areas or a dry area, you're going to have the healthiest lawn you've ever seen. And that's what we see consistently. And that's why Redmond has stayed with us for 7 years. They wouldn't stay with us if it wasn't working ultimately. Because you can't have an unhealthy, but the thing is, what I'm saying today is this what Mother Nature's done on her own for a long, long time. I'm just trying to get you the information and the products and the plan to take any lawn down this road and be organic. And it has to work ultimately, or we definitely would not be here today if it didn't. Good question?
Dandelion, what's the best? Do you want them pops or is there something like that, right?
I mean, you can pop them out. they have a taproot. You can pop them out with even a screwdriver. That's what I'll use a lot of times. Just get down deep and pop it out, pull it out. Then, I mean, if it's a weed is big enough, you may want to come in and overseed it. Put some seed down and put some mulch, mulch covering on that. I'll do that probably every spring if I have a few weeds in the yard. I'll go out there and I'll pop them out. I'll overseed a few areas, and then you're good. And then if you get the grass really healthy and thick, organically, there's just less areas for the weed seeds to grow in the future. And that's the key for weed prevention, is not putting down preventative herbicides, or post herbicides after you have weeds. That is not the plan. The plan is to get it so healthy and strong you don't need to put anything down. And you have healthy soils, and you have a healthy lawn. We're saying with plants. You have a healthy plant, it's a resistant plant. That's what we shoot for. So I don't want anybody to have any kind of weeds. So there's always a chance something got damaged and it didn't get overseeded and a weed seed blew in. So just do some scouting in the early spring, pop out a few weeds that you see. A lot of national companies have got people programmed. They have a few weeds, you go out and put a weed and feed down. Not a fan of a weed and feed. I've never been a fan of a weed and feed. Blanket applications of herbicides, because you have a few weeds, is never a good thing to do. You have herbicide across everything. At that point, I don't recommend anybody go on the lawn. And a lot of times they don't work very well, they're not effective, you still have weeds, and ultimately we don't need chemicals to have healthy turf. Question?
So, I haven't used it in years, but I have a bag of weed feed.
Yeah.
How do I dispose of it responsibly?
That's a good.
I mean, I haven't, like I said, I haven't used it in years.
Yeah, you'd have to call up. I know there's a lot of times there's drop-offs for chemicals and different. They'd have clinics and different things where you can bring stuff out of your garage. You could call the local city, county, and ask them where can you dispose of this product.
Okay.
Because they do normally have those. Because a lot of people will have chemicals in their garages for years. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Victoria. Yeah.
Oh, is it the same place where you keep your gas?
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, the big take-home message of why we're here today is we're trying to turn back the clock. We're trying to return the soil back to the way it was, and also realize we're growing turf in an acidic environment, and we know this. So even if it was perfect soil, in some sense, it could be a little acidic for healthy lawn regardless, and that's why, and most of your counties will encourage you to do soil testing because they don't really want us putting down chemicals anyways. And I know it's available and there's lots of advertising, but ultimately, this program works better. I enjoy feeding a healthy lawn when it doesn't really need to be fed. I don't see that it's hungry. I like to see grass stay green all the time and be able to see consistent growth where I can go out and mow something and not have a field. I don't mind mowing my lawn. I got tired of that. I wouldn't have a lawn at all if I didn't have an organic option because I got tired of all the grass. And we don't need that. We don't need to have a bin for grass. It should stay right there. So over time, you likely need less nutrients. If you irrigate initially, maybe you do an application in the spring, summer, and fall. If you don't irrigate, you're going to want to do it, obviously, in the spring and fall, 2 applications a year. So really, it's 2 to 3 in most cases. That is it. And you can't really put it down too heavy. That's what's great about it. 8 to 10 pounds per thousand. There's spreader settings on our bags. It's hard to make a mistake. But initially, that's kind of the unknown. That's why I tell people to try the Nitrogen Plus to at least start the process there. And then you wait and see how it looks. And within 6 months to a year, you will be fully organic, healthy lawn. And then most people never look back. I've never had anybody come back and say, well, I've gone down your road, Michael, and I went back to chemicals. I've never really had that conversation yet. Because it works. That's the key. I mean, I said, I grew up in chemicals. And I grew up in a high-end turf, as high as you can get. And so it has to ultimately work, and this does. And I'm glad you all came out today. Any other questions? Sir?
Is it too late to aerate?
No. I mean, aeration is all about timing. Because ultimately you want to see a core pop out. If it's done too early and you have a really spongy lawn, if you poking holes and nothing's really coming out, then it's not the time to aerate. Right now, because of the wetness, I mean, if your lawn is starting to firm up, that's when you want to aerate. If you can get a couple inches of core to pop out of that ground, that's a great thing. Yeah, so yes.
Is that pH chart on your website?
Yes, it is. If you go under turf programs, they'll be on soil testing, and then it'll show this one. I mean, I love this scale. I mean, it's amazing. This is kind of information, and you think that 4.5 pHs, you know, if it's but then again, availability for a plant, if it's a hydrangea, acid-loving plant, they don't need a lot of these minerals to survive. They just need some of it to survive, and Mother Nature provides just enough. Turf is something that's very unique. You know, grass didn't grow this way until we learned how to mow it. It was just outgrowing in grasslands everywhere. It was never like this. But once we took it down to a level, and a golf course is down to under 3/16 of an inch, we created a different environment. And it's under stress. It's constantly being cut, constantly having to grow and cut, grow. So it needs to be really healthy to avoid all of the fungus and insect attacks and everything that we have. And the only way to really do that effectively is a good, consistent organic program.
I have a question about because of the wetness, the increase in the creek fly,
Yes.
larva.
Yes.
So what is the best thing to do to prevent your grass from being eaten up by those little buggers?
Dry it out.
Well,
But drying it out by getting moisture inside of products like Axis, aeration, you know, get the wetness away, because the larvae need that wetness. You know, the female will lay her eggs. Once you see a big fly around your yard, it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to eat anything. It's just going to lay the eggs. And then once it starts to develop in the ground, now a really cold winter can zap a lot of them too. They won't survive. They'll freeze solid. But if you have a little bit warmer winter, and I've only seen damage in wet areas. And if it's a well-drained lawn or the moisture's inside of the axis or whatever, I don't really see damaged areas. And back in I think it was back in 95, we had a major El Nino, and I was on a golf course, and we had huge dead areas all over. And that's when I really started looking at chemicals differently, because we went out and sprayed in those areas. And all the larvae came to the surface. And then what happened? All the birds ate them. They thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, they ingested all of this insecticide, and we lost birds all over the golf course. It's the saddest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, well, that's not a good thing to do. You know, I've really transitioned over the years to seeing that. But then again, I wasn't really taught that there was a better way to go. And I'm still up against the chemical companies, and I've worked for them. I know them from the inside out. And I'm glad to be able to come and do these talks again, you know, post, hopefully, COVID, where I can get this information out, and we're taping it. I really want people to think differently. Because again, you have an ecosystem at your house. You have an ecosystem in the ground. And let's maintain it that way, and let's fix it. And you're not going to give up beautiful green grass going down this road. It's just you need to make sure, instead of putting money into chemicals and Band-Aids and temporarily fixing them, let's get a solution that permanently fixes them. And then you'll enjoy your lawn better. If you have grandkids or pets or wildlife all over your yard, you know what? I'm not going to hurt anything. I want them to be there. I have rabbits and I have birds and everything on my lawn. Yeah.
So do you recommend the diatomaceous earth on wet as well as dry?
Yes, it works both ways.
My front yard is totally different than my backyard.
Yes,
Okay.
but it works both ways. They said it's one of those things where you put down what you could afford one season, you come back and put another application down another season, and you say, you know what, now it's getting to optimum. It's firmer, it's healthier, and then you're good to go after that. You won't need it. Any other questions?
How much would that bag cover?
I mean, that's a 25-pound bag, but it's really light. So it really comes down to how big an area and how heavy you want to put it down. It could just do one patch, one 3x3 patch or something. It's really wet. You just put it down and sweep it in. Or you could put down 4 bags, 100 pounds per 1,000 square feet, put it in a spreader and do one application, come back again. Oh, I need another one, another 100 pounds. So it really just depends on how wet it is, really how much you need. So I said, it could just be one bad spot, and you put one full bag down, sweep it in, you come back again with another full bag. and then you're good to go. Because it's spot treatment, full treatment, you know, it works in either way. Any other questions? Okay.
I was just thinking about your company, in a 25-pound bag, 25 pounds.
It is a 25-pound bag, but the volume-wise is equal to about a 40-pound bag of fertilizer. Yeah, because it's really bulky and light, which makes it very easy. I mean, look, think of this bag. It's a big bag, but it's really pretty light to put down. It's got a very light density to it. So, any other questions?
Will you be available for some quick questions
Yeah,
afterwards?
yeah,
individually?
I will be. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just take a couple of
Sure.
these things for my son?
Absolutely.
He couldn't come, and I know he would love to. Question, can you put this down and the nitrogen plus at the same
Yes.
time? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Thank you
can.
so much.
Yes.
Hi, I did a full redo on my lawn and did the aerate, thatch, Pacific topsoils 4-in-1, seeded, and then put, seeded, then put the topsoil on top.
Yeah.
And it's kind of patchy, and I did it like 9 weeks ago.
It could have been the cold weather too.
Well, and the
Let
one
me
thing
see.
is I've kept it wet. I mean, somebody said if it dries out, it dies out.
Yeah,
So it's
but
been
it-
wet
and you-
every day.
And you've got like peat moss over it or covering over it?
Well, it's the 4-in-1.
Yeah.
It's basically over the seed.
Over the seeds, like very light. How deep is it?
Well, and the spots where it's not growing,
It's
it's
too
like
deep.
that deep. It's
Yeah,
too
so it
deep.
smothered it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
so-
couldn't get to the surface.
Just wondering what type of product. I mean, this for sure, because I've got some irregular drainage. But which one of these for the new?
Nitrogen Plus, probably if it's new and you haven't used organics, I would definitely start with Nitrogen Plus.
Okay, and it's here.
Yes, and see too, you may need to oversee some of those spots again. 'Cause we've had unusually, I've had people say that, you know, they put it down. We've had, you know, grass doesn't seed don't go very well at 50 degrees. We've had a lot of days in the 50s. So if it's patchy, I think it's going to warm up now. Days like today are perfect. It's probably to overseed it again in some of those spots, and then you should be fine. But yeah, so Nitrogen Plus, and then see how it goes. And then
Okay.
transition, because that guarantees the new grass nutrients right up front, so it
And
gets
this-
good development.
Is there any like rule of thumb for like square footage for nitrogen plus?
I mean, it's probably 8 pounds or so per 1,000 square feet, depending on how many thousands you have.
I got 2,500.
Yeah, so you know
Bag.
that'll do. I mean, it'll come close.
Does it go bad?
No,
So you can use it again
you
next
can
year?
use it next year. The main thing to do is keep it dry. That's the only way. So it would actually just break down your bag is all. But no, it won't go bad.
All right,
It'll be
great.
good for years.
Where do we find it?
It's in there. You have to see if they have any more Nitrogen Plus, or ask them and they'll bring it from the back. They do have it in the back.
Okay.
But everything is normally in that room.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yes.
Question, so there's nothing you can put down to kill the clover because it's way too much big now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you
And they have
use
a lot of wheat too, and like,
Yeah. if you spray it, yeah, you'll have to try. If you do try to spray, which I don't like, but you'd have to try and rake it out if you can get a good control with it. I know if it's a lot, to dig
yeah,
out.
it's crazy, yeah, like
Yeah, it's gone crazy. Because no matter, you're going to have a big kind of a dead spot there. So you'll have to seed into it. But even if you do go down like the dark road to try it and zap it back, you'll have to rake it all out and then seed it. You could dig out some of it, or you could just cut out a whole area and then just seed that whole area and go fresh.
okay, so there's no easy way.
Well, clover's hard to control even with chemicals. It's very, a lot of times the herbicide just washes right off the, clover, and it doesn't really get a very good control, unfortunately. Yeah, clover's tough. I mean, it's, worst part, it doesn't take much water or nutrients or anything to grow, unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Great fact.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, he's not questioning.
Yeah.
I missed coming earlier.
Okay.
So lots of grass,
Okay.
mostly moss,
Okay.
and it's just loving it.
Yeah, it's loving it.
So we haven't done any moss out, but I didn't
You
hear
could
what
do
you
it.
recommend.
I mean, if you could get a dethatcher and just or even a rake, a really stiff rake.
It's just, we've got 10,000
But probably a
square feet of
dethatcher.
grass.
if you could run any fast with really light and just go over and just remove it all.
Yes, rake it off. And
Rake it off, get rid of all of it,
Okay.
aerate it. Like I said, doing the program,
thatching also takes out the good grass, but not to worry because you'll
you're gonna
overseed.
you're gonna overseed it. So you're
Okay.
basically gonna do probably what our full renovation is,
Okay.
our step by step.
Uh-huh.
Try to
Okay.
remove it all. If you have really wet, a lot of wet areas, you could buy a few bags of Axis. Try to put that on some of the
Okay.
wet areas. Hi, this is Michael Schafer from Hendrikus Organics. Just did a talk on the benefits of going organic with our products. I want to thank Squak Mt Nursery for hosting this event and the people that showed up. Please go to our website for more information at hendrikusorganics.com.